Dara, can you talk about a time when you had to advocate for yourself? What strategies did you use and what was the outcome?
Sure, a great question. I've can think of many times I've had to advocate for myself, right, throughout my career, whether it be in the starting points of learning just what business is like and how do I understand the different pieces of business, who does what, and how do I build myself up. To even today, sometimes there's still those moments where I have to acknowledge that I know what I'm doing and represent that in the right directive. So a lot of times what I think about is one, very straight and narrow language. When I'm going after something, I don't go too technical. I don't go
Hmm.
into the weeds of misunderstanding what I'm trying to present. I make it so it's clear, and I make it so it's clear within my own mind, right? And that usually represents a good clarity at back out. And then two, I make sure that I define what I'm trying to present or define why my position is so strong and what it
Yeah.
means to me in order to go out and advocate. And a lot of times it's something right now that's more about just not myself, but my department, or more
Mm.
about not just myself, but the business, right? And so when I go after that defining moment, I make sure that there's obviously a lot of good, positioning behind it. I do my research. I make sure that I come to the table with everything there. And three, I think the last thing is it's just you're constantly reassuring yourself and doing your own advocacy. I don't know if you
Mm.
sit in your own mind at any point, but I do. And I have to sit there and say, gosh, there's something new coming out, right? Whether we were approaching something with AI or we were approaching
Mm.
something with a new solution. And when I sat there rethinking about it, I try to make sure I don't overthink it and go myself into that spiral downward. I try to advocate for myself like these are the good things that you can do for the business. This is the reason why you're sitting there to go do
Mm.
it. Once you do that, it strengthens yourself. And then the next day you can get up and go do it for someone else. And I think, you're constantly re-advocating for yourself. And I think it's an important part of your own role, but it
Mm.
strengthens your thought process and your abilities and brings it forward for the next step.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've touched on some really great points there, kind of toeing the line between preparation, but also having that confidence within yourself to say, well, I'm prepared, but also, I know to go and do it. So I think it's, striking that balance, which is really interesting.
It is. And I think everybody has a hard time getting past the middle point of the balance to
Mm.
get over to the finish line. Once I think it's more about just look, everyone's put into their positions and they know what they're doing. And when they
Yeah.
don't, they phone a friend, they get a lifeline, or
Hmm.
they re-educate themselves. If you're constantly doing that, re-educating yourself, you feel like that middle ground is no problem to achieve. And then
Mm.
you get to the other side and you're like, now I'm ready to go ahead and advocate further and tell people why it's so important or why it's important that I'm just sitting in the role I am because of the strengths I have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. Second question, can you talk about a time you experienced imposter syndrome and how did you overcome that?
So imposter syndrome, gosh, such a hard word, right? For us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think again, if you think about the strategies in our lives, you don't just walk into a door and say you become a C-suite overnight, right? It's a lot of
Mm.
hard work and a lot of doors that open, a lot of doors that close. And you have to know which ones to go through at what times. And when the door shuts, you have to figure out how to go open another one, right? So there's all these problems and processes. So imposter syndrome is very easy. It's like data going into hallucination, right? You think that you're not the smartest person in the room, so suddenly you
Mm.
become not the one that has the go-to importance and people aren't going to look at you the right way. But again, it comes into self-confidence. I think each day we try to reinterpret ourselves into that and try to help ourselves. And so a lot of times I'll just talk to myself. As strange as
Mm.
that might seem, the more that you talk to yourself in the right way, in that positive motion, the better you're going to
Yeah.
be. And then that posture syndrome doesn't feel like it's there anymore. I mean, taking a new job, going to a new area, getting a new education, whatever we draw out from that, we're constantly feeling like we're imposters, right? Standing up in front of a classroom as I did, last year at Columbia into an engineering graduate program. I mean, the sweat and the anxiety that you feel, right?
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, I'm not going to make it. They're all the next generation of brightness. They know more than I do. But then getting in there and finding relatable topics that meant something to them and being able to then engage that and change the language of the room and change the
Mm.
engagement points. Suddenly now we're having a conversation and that imposter syndrome starts to like fade out. And by the
Mm.
time you're done and you're leaving, you're suddenly becoming friends and people are following you on social media and you're now
Mm.
feel like you're a part of it and you can go do it again. And maybe you fall into that syndrome one more time. But if you do, you remember those moments that you just had and you remember
Yeah.
how you got out of it. So relatability is, or
Mm.
diversification within that relatability is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, touched on some great points, but I think the main kind of thing there is just the way you speak to yourself can really take you in one way or the other. And a lot of the time we've kind of got to go through the situation to be like, okay, I can do it. That wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
So then the next time you do it, you talk to yourself in a different way. So I love that. So yeah, that was great. Thank you. And then final question, what advice would you give to younger women entering the tech world?
I would say stick with it. A lot of people tend to say, gosh, it's a hard market for females to be in. But I think
Mm.
if you can watch the generation that I came through walking through it, I think that was the hardest generation to start, or
Yeah.
maybe even generations before mine, because we've really, I wouldn't say paved the way. I think we just fought through it to work
Mm.
through what we believed in. And technology, when I started, was much different than it is today. And I think there's a lot that can be offered in the space for female leaders, but find the position that you love, right? Don't stick with something that, you're not passionate about every day. Make sure you get up in the morning each day, as I do, and say, let's go. And then open something new to do, right? Whether it's new ideas, something new that you
Mm.
learn, something new that you're sharing with someone else, or something new that you want to program or design. There's so much at our fingertips to be able to keep opening
Mm.
up and relating it to the world. And so it's an exciting time for female leaders to continue their path. I would also say, find your personal branding through it. Make
Mhm.
sure that you develop yourself. It's great to be a part of organizations and companies, but they're all what you are, right? So personal brand yourself so that you can keep related, like sharing who you are and what you do so others can follow you and become more attracted to what you're doing. And then it becomes more of a, hey, we're one big community. Let's find each
Mm.
other. Let's make sure that we're connecting. And so personal branding is so important because then we are able to reconnect with others that have common interests and we can learn from them,
Mm.
but it also makes you feel confident. So overall confidence brings what's new and different for you and what you can do with that. So there's so many, I could go hours of advice, right? There's so much to share. And I would say the last thing is if you fall, just get back up. I always remind my team members that if, you're tripping over a shoelace that's loose and it's just made you trip, I guarantee the next time you're gonna tie that shoelace and
Mm.
probably double knot it, right? But it's okay to do that. It's okay to trip and fall. It's okay to say that that wasn't the right position for you. It's okay to say, gosh, I could be doing more. Just make sure that you go do it for yourself and keep engaging and do something that you really love.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dara, thank you so much for your advice. It's been so wonderful speaking with you.
You as well. Thank you.